I started calling my father and my sister, like, quite often. And it got to where I was calling them almost every single day, and I was getting really frustrated because, I mean, I just kept going over to, like, same parts of the student hut over and over, and I was never going to leave. I started giving up on it because after they put me on the student hut again, everything seemed, you know, anything else seemed better. Anything and everything else seemed better than the student hut. So I was seriously thinking of just joining the Sea Org and giving up.
So you wouldn't have to do the student hut anymore?
Yeah, I would complain to my mom. I wasn't getting through it, and I was getting really frustrated. And my dad and my sister were like, "Come on, you need to get through it. You're missing school time." And they would always be supportive of me. And I would be calling them in secret. I would do it from the one-stop shop, which is a Scientologist's own shop, but I would do it in the corner on the payphone, and I would try to keep everything quiet because we were a little critical of the Sea Org then in our phone conversations. But when I would also go to the public library and call. I would walk there late at night, which I wasn't allowed to do. You're not allowed to walk anywhere. You have to go on buses to everywhere. And so finally, Astra, one day she's like, "Do you want Dad to just like come pick you up? You know, like you could just get out of there. You wouldn't have to talk to anyone, but you could just come back." And she said, "It seems like you're never gonna get done." And I was like, "Wow, Ashley, you're talking of blowing. Like, because blowing is like you just leave without permission, and that's a really bad offense. But it seems so great to me. Like, I was like, oh my God, and I could leave and just leave because you never think of that possibility, or at least I never thought of that possibility. I never thought of it.
Until she said it that day?
Yeah, I never thought of just leaving. I never thought I would actually do it. I'm not even sure I actually even had the thought, like, what if I just left? I never even had that. I was just like, wow. And then I was like, yeah. It was kind of like, yeah, okay. And then, so then we kind of worked out a plan of like, would I just fly to LA? Because I had a return ticket from when I went back from Hawaii. I said to my dad, I said, I know it's going to cost extra money, but it will give me extra motivation if you just buy me a return ticket. Make this a round trip, me going back to Florida, and then make it a round trip, and I would have the ticket with me. And normally they would have tried to take it away and take my ID away, but I hid the ticket. And I always kept it in my backpack, which I had on me every single day. So we were trying to decide what I should do. Like, should Dad come pick me up, or should I just fly out there? Back there on my return ticket. And I was so scared. What I was doing was so forbidden that I felt I wouldn't have enough courage, and it would seem so weird because, you know, when even going in a car is like a treat to you, catching a taxi is like seems impossible. You're like, I get a taxi? What about the guy? Won't he be weird? Do I just give him the money at the end?
So it was just too much.
Yeah, it was kind of too much. It was overwhelming. So we arranged a plan for Dad to come out here and pick me up really quickly. Like, it would be like a 24-hour round trip. And I had to make sure everything was perfect. Like, I had to fix every little detail. So finally my dad did fly out here. He spent one night really quick in a hotel, came early in the morning. I came to meet him. I had like all my stuff. I had started putting it in cardboard boxes, like storing it in a cardboard box in the workplace. And I like packed up some backpacks really tightly, and I felt really guilty. I felt so guilty. Like the night before when I said goodnight to my grandma, and I knew it was like the last time I'd see her. She's rather old. And I was just like, you know, okay, I can't do anything about this. I'm just going to have to say goodbye. So then in the morning, I felt so bad. I felt like, because I was leaving some of my stuff behind because I couldn't pack it all in. And I was like, I felt so guilty towards my mother. I was like, I'm going to leave my poor mother to clean out the rest of my stuff, even like that. So then I finally got to my dad, and we just flew off. And even then, in the middle of that, even though I didn't really like Scientology anymore, even though I wouldn't admit it to myself, I still wanted to go back. In some ways, I still felt like I could just go back right now. I could just go back right now. Even then, it was still a conflict for me. So,
you didn't know what you were going into, really, did you?
No, I didn't. I wasn't even sure I could like go to public school, because you know, public school. I wasn't even sure that I would be able to exist within the system. You know, I would be able to do well. So then I got on the plane with my dad, and I left. By the time we drove home, about a 40-minute drive, my mom had already left a bunch of messages on the phone, and And then she called up and she was just talking to my sister and my dad, and I didn't want to talk to her because, like, when my sister blew, or like left suddenly to England without permission, my mom had called her up, and my mom then had been all like crying and everything, and pleading with her, and I didn't want her to do that with me because I just felt so guilty. I'd been living with her for the last 6 years, and suddenly I would just be leaving her. But when I got on the phone with her, she was really just like angry and snappy with me.
Really?
Yeah, she was. I thought she would be a little understanding, but she was just like angry, and she was kind of mean about it. And eventually I finally agreed, after about 3 weeks of them threatening to declare me a suppressive person, things like this. I finally went in for an interview just to make sure that I hadn't stolen anything, like important documents. I was so nervous because I knew I'd have to be lying. Because by this time I hated Scientology. I did not like it. I knew the truth about it. I read up about it on the internet, and I read that book. Dad had passed it on to me. I liked it so much. I read it, the whole thing, in one day.
What was the book?
The Madman or Messiah by Bent Cordon. So.
Now, where had you gotten on the internet? At the library?
No, this was at home.
Oh, you had gotten to LA and gone on the internet.
This was a few weeks afterwards because they took a while to convince me to go in for an interview. And this time, I didn't like Scientology at all. So I was worried that, they would find out in the e-meter, because I was still scared of the e-meter. I still had so many normal Scientologist fears. Like that morning that I was supposed to go, and I still went to school that morning, but I felt so sick to my stomach. I had to go to the nurse's office, and I started crying, and I just kind of went through a nervous breakdown that day. But I went and I did it anyway. And I did all sorts of tricks, because I still felt that they could read what I was thinking from this. So I would wiggle my big toe so that the electrical thing would go wrong, and they couldn't tell. And I would think up something else when they asked for this thing, so that I felt I was fooling them. And I did, because they asked me a bunch of important questions that I could have spewed my guts over, but I didn't. I just lied. And they asked me more than just, did I steal anything? They asked me about sexual things, had I done anything sexually that made me want to leave. They asked me what were my crimes, things like that.
How did you feel when you discovered that the e-meter wasn't such an all-powerful thing after all?
Because I've never gone back to an e-meter. I mean, I still kind of do have a fear of them. I mean, I think I always has kind of some Scientologist fears in some ways. I feel like it'll be so hard for me to completely shake Scientology out of my mind.
So how long have you been out?
Late February 2000.
So almost exactly a year ago.
Yeah, but I haven't been out of Scientology for more than 10 months, because it took me a while, reading and internet.
Well, how are you doing in the last 10 months now that you're out?
Good. I go to Birmingham High School. I kind of lead a regular teenage life.
Is it fun?
Yeah. And I like school, which is all the other students in my class are like, "What's wrong with you, straight A student?" And I'm like, "Okay, if you had known."
You have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. And I always liked books, so I'm a year behind in school.
What grade are you in?
I'm a sophomore. I'm grade 10. I miss so many subjects. I never studied history really, or geography or anything like that. Only basic subjects in Scientology. I missed time in New York, so it was just a lot of time. So I said, start me as a freshman, and put me in the easiest math class, because they didn't really believe in teaching algebra. They thought it's so unimportant, you'll never need it.
In Scientology they didn't?
Yeah, in the Sea Org. So yeah, I was in the really easy classes of everything. But I got all A's. I only had the last 10 weeks of the year, but I managed to get all A's, and I learned how to type in 10 weeks. It was amazing to me. And I rose to the top of my English class, my math class, my history class, because I just liked it so much. So yeah, and then we went on another vacation, Oregon and stuff, in the summer, and I was another vacation, It was a year or two after Hawaii, and I was wow.
Did you have a good time?
Yeah, it was fun. And then I'm back in school now, and I don't know. In some ways, I feel it's ruined my life, and in some ways, I mean, I know I have to work through this, but I feel like inadequate in some ways because people around me seem so normal, and I had to work through so much Scientology habits, like holding in and not wanting to go in front of the group because you have to speak so perfectly and robotically that I felt like if I made an oral presentation, people would be like, God, who's she? And so I've worked through a lot of that though, and then the other side of it is I feel so lucky because I went through all that, and other people don't appreciate what they have now, and I'm like, school, oh, a bed. I was like, wow, look at this huge bed, and I have my own big bedroom to myself, and I can eat whatever I want, and like I have an allowance, a regular allowance every week that I don't have to beg for. I'm just like, Dad, can I have my allowance? And so my life's just, I don't know, I feel blessed, and I feel like I went through a lot that I shouldn't have. I don't feel that the Church of Scientology treated me fairly or right, and I feel that they put me through a lot of stuff that I never should have been put through. But I feel like I came out of it okay.